1 week season, fam, La Familia, welcome back. It is another week of DFS Labs Fanduel edition. My name is Mike Johnson, mjohnson86, as I'm known in those DFS and best ball streets. We are heading into week 3. We had week 2 where everyone overreacts. And then week 3 now is we get to sway back the other way. There's a lot going on. We've got some multiple data points. We can kind of start piecing some things together, but still a little early to jump to too many conclusions. And there's a lot of teams who maybe they started out with 2 really, really soft matchups, and now they have a much tougher matchup, or on the flip side, 2 tough matchups going into an easier one. So all that said, we are heading into week 3. You know, we've got to roll with the punches. Week 1 was a low-scoring week. Week 2 seemed like everything went kind of nutty in terms of scoring, game environments, and whatnot. With all of that said, we're going to build another lineup on FanDuel for you this week and talk through things. It's pretty early in the week still, and we've got a lot of injury situations we'll have to wait and see. Still early enough in the year that we aren't having too much weather stuff. You'll see my background today. It is the last week that we will have. It'll be fall next week once we're recording this. So last FanDuel Labs of the summer, and now we've got Maximus. How we doing?
Looks like you're along the coast near me, sir, judging on the background there. Did you take a quick trip to Florida?
It's a calm morning here.
Nice. Yeah, week 2 was interesting. Obviously, there's on the injury front, there's some situations that we have to adjust for. We built a team last week. I kind of had an extension of that team that did place in my 5-entry max tournament. But otherwise, I had a couple Burrow teams, which, you know, another case of in-game injuries that you can't really do anything about. But, yeah, look forward to diving into week 3 with you and see how we can bounce back or continue forward in a positive direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And just want to touch on quick our site, oneweekseason.com. We have our Bink machine is our optimizer. And this week only, it is, if any listeners, if you use code BINK1 to purchase it, usually it's $19 for a week use of it. But for this week only, if you use code BINK1, you can get access to it for the week for just $1. Did have a lot of success in the OWS family this week. The Binks channel on Discord had several people doing very well. We actually had someone reach out to us. The guy who won the Spy on DraftKings, the Spy, the Red Zone, the Fair Catch, he won like several of them, almost 200 grand. He's an OWS subscriber. He sent us an email. He's not really on Discord, but sent us an email just kind of thanking us. So shout out to him on an awesome week. But yeah, you know, a lot of he specifically is more a single entry. I think he hand built his stuff. He was talking about stuff he had seen in the scroll from me and JM. You know, and Pappy had mentioned something as well that he put into play. But then a lot of the Bink in the Bink channel and Discord, a lot of the people who are talking about it, they had used the Bink machine to kind of help them get their big wins. So with that, now we've got the Sims as well. Things are really kind of rolling along. So definitely check that out for those of you who are, you know, maybe you're a little intimidated by an optimizer. We've got some nice videos, some tutorials to kind of walk you through it. And for just $1, you can kind of test it out for a week. You can see how it works, can kind of get a feel for it. Maybe make some entries, see how they look, throw them in some lower dollar stuff and see how it goes. And I also, week 2, for the first time, I added player groups to be used in the Bink machine, which JM always does for DraftKings. But this year, I'm going to be looking to do that for FanDuel as well, and throwing them in some of when I put together my MME runs for the bigger contests. A lot of times I'll do that. Sometimes I go back and will manually edit some things afterwards, but kind of gives me a good idea how I want to build, you know, gives me a look at some different lineups, maybe takes my biases out of it. So really cool. With all that said, we're going to get right into week 3 a little quicker here this week. So Maximus, I'm going to pull up my screen quick on FanDuel and we will get into it. Do you have where do you want to build this week?
Yeah.
Tournament do you want to build in? Obviously, we just kind of build a all-encompassing tournament lineup on Fanduel, but any tournament you want to talk about or get into?
Yeah, they're doing the Sunday NFL Snap again. We had briefly mentioned this last week. 350K prize pool. Again, top 50% of the field gets paid. There's a little more entries in it this week, 78,750. It's a 20 entry max tournament at $4 a team. And then first place is $50,000 up top. And it's if they continue to do these, I'll continue to contribute and play them along with the 5 entry max that I usually do individually. But yeah, we can go in there if you want, or if there's something else at a higher dollar amount you may have identified, I'm all ears.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We can build in this one. There's the $333 entry milli as well. Kind of a crazy structure that it's like it's $1 million to first place, but it is like a $2.25 million prize pool. That one also has slight overlay, and it's kind of similar. It pays like 37% of the field, but like the payout is $375 and you're putting in $333. So you're like getting just over your money back. Kind of the same as in the snap here, where, it pays half the field, but it's only paying back $5 on a $4 entry for that half. But it's always nice to get a little bit more back. And with the guaranteed overlay, you're more likely to be in that top 50%. So for sure, some fun things they're doing to start the year. Hopefully it continues.
Absolutely. I'm digging their tournament ideas for sure, or their offerings. So let's start this week with a game environment that I had actually been steering towards this before I even saw what the game total was, but it just so happens the game total correlates as the current highest game total on the slate. We're going to go with a team that is actually winless, but they've definitely, in my opinion, been showing signs of life on the offensive side of the ball under Ben Johnson, and love the price on him this week. We're going to go ahead and start our build with Caleb Williams of the Chicago Bears. And let's go ahead and pair him with his newfound chemistry mate, Rome Odunze. Caveat, DJ Moore is also completely viable as well. Probably be less owned, I'm sure. But Caleb Williams with Rome Odunze, and I definitely think this should have a Dallas Cowboys bring back. Unfortunately, Chicago Bears defense definitely hampered in the secondary. Jalen Johnson is out indefinitely with a re-aggravated groin injury. You have Terrell Smith, another cornerback that was placed on injured reserve. So we can kind of piggyback off what we built at the beginning last week with the Cowboys offense. But in this case, Caleb Williams, he's looking good. He's averaging a little over 20 points a game. I even saw a design run for him against Detroit this past week. So it seems like, the chemistry is building in Ben Johnson's offensive system. And obviously he's started to make a connection with Rome Odunze. So kind of like going here for the start. Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze. Maybe I'll do dealer's choice for you on which Cowboy you may want to bring it back with, and then take it from there.
Yeah, so I like the Rome Odunze call. Caleb Williams as well. That Dallas defense made Russell Wilson look real good. And obviously Odunze's price has gone up slightly, but it's also one of those things. I think sometimes people are too worried about I'm late to the party. Like he already had his big game, but certainly could repeat it. I mean, he had 11 targets last week. It seems like they scheme him targets, and when Williams starts scrambling around, Odunze's kind of the guy he's looking for or will find. So I think, he's kind of established himself as like the clear alpha. And I think we could see have some decent games, but I also could see, I could see them giving the young guys a little more looks. I could see more maybe falling a little out of favor. Certainly a lot of different ways, you can go there. And as far as the Bears, the Cowboys, let's go ahead and let's just bring it back with George Pickens. Let's go back to him again. Had a nice game, kind of broke through nine targets last week. Obviously, they threw the ball a lot, but 5 catches for 68 yards. I kind of think that the way to play it, I like the Caleb play, is if we are betting on this game environment, which is fine, and then you have Caleb and Dak, if I was gonna play Lamb here, then I would just play Dak instead of Williams, just from the standpoint of like if Lamb gets there, with him and Williams being the same price, if Lamb puts up, that a 25, a 30-point game, we know Dak is there. Whereas Lamb could put up a big game and maybe Caleb doesn't have that massive ceiling outcome. You look at last week, Amon-Ra St. Brown had a massive game. Caleb, Odunze also got there with him, but he only put up 18 fantasy points. Caleb Williams did. So I think if I'm gonna go with the Williams stack, I prefer Pickens, if that makes some sense. And if I was to go with Lamb, then I would just swap Williams to Dak. But either way, I think there's a lot of ways to play this game, a lot of ways that it could play out for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Pickens being the ancillary or the second receiver, still capable of providing enough activity to benefit our team here. And to your point with the CD Lamb, CD Lamb obviously is always capable of going nuclear, and in which case it would be better attached with Dak. So yeah, I like that kind of matching him up as the bring back. And then interesting where we can go from here, because a lot of value at running back this week due to injury and
we're putting
some other game environment. What's that?
We're putting Mason in. We're not messing around. I mean, Aaron Jones put on injured reserve, going to be out the next 4 weeks. They're also without JJ McCarthy, which with how he's looked for most of the first 2 games, that's not necessarily a terrible thing for their offense. It doesn't really change much. I guess they've been kind of sputtering. So Carson Wentz will start there. Of course, Wentz is pretty cheap. I believe he's the min price 6,000. So, this game, obviously not what we were thinking. You see it before the season, week 3, kind of circle it on the calendar. You're thinking McCarthy's going to be this upstart with all these weapons. Cincy with Joe Burrow. It'll be interesting, but the Bengals, they played week 1, they played the Browns, who didn't have Quinshon Judkins, who immediately looked like their best running back. So they didn't have him. Jerome Ford, Dylan Sampson, the offense just wasn't good. But then last week, the Jaguars, Travis Etienne and Bashul Tutin both looked really, really good and put up a ton of production. So now you've got Mason. I mean, he's going to be the workhorse like he was in San Francisco to start last year. And I don't think this Bengals defense is one to be scared of. So at 5,800, kind of a no-brainer, kind of for any style of tournament. Is there another running back that you have your eye on early in this week?
Well, you read my mind on Jordan Mason, of course, so I'm glad we plugged him in. Another honorable mention, or somebody you can plug in, I think would be Bill Merritt for the Washington Commanders. They're at home against the Las Vegas Raiders, coming off a Monday night game. We know Jaden Daniels is kind of wait and see with the sprained knee. Austin Eckler, sadly, out for the year with the Achilles. So Bill Merritt has an opportunity, I think, to get more volume in that matchup. But I think on the high end of the scale, Bijan Robinson, and based on how we have our pricing so far, I think is almost automatic against the Carolina Panthers. We, definitely want to target running games against Carolina. Bijan, I guess there'd be a little bit of a fear of Algier maybe being more involved in a matchup like this. But on the higher end, I definitely like Bijan on the. If we were staying in the value zone, I think Bill Merritt is someone to think about and account for. But I'll throw it back to you where you want to go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I'm in wait and see mode on Merritt. I think he's more of like a long-term play, and I don't know that the Eckler thing changes that much. Like they're not really using him as a pass catching back. I think game script wise, like there will be games where like they get out ahead, and he gets used more and they run him more. But I think that Daniels injury plays a lot into it. Maybe I'll have more interest if if we find out later in the week, he's good to go. He's going to be his normal self and play. I think that just the efficiency of the offense is kind of what JCM is going to kind of bank on there. So I'm good with Bijan. His price is obviously getting kind of out of hand here, but understandably he has through 2 weeks 24.4 and 21.3 Fanduel points. He's only scored 1 touchdown through 2 weeks, which at some point that's going to come back. So yeah, I think even last week, like Algier was involved, but Bijan had 27 touches, and they were kind of in control of the game when they kind of handed things over to Algier. So not going to have any complaints about me with Bijan or from me with Bijan. He looks like the best running back in the game right now. So yeah, all right. So where do we want to go from here? I'll let you pick a defense, and then we can kind of talk through these last 3 spots.
Yeah, sure. And I agree. The touchdown regression, you got to think it's arrows up eventually for Bijan, and maybe even this week could be a good candidate based on who they're matched up with. A few defenses, and of course, to your point, Bijan 9,500. It's getting pretty hefty on the price. On the lower end of the spectrum, I kind of like the Jacksonville Jaguars defense at 3,300. They're playing a Texans team that definitely has offensive line issues, definitely has healthy running back issues, and coming back home, I think that's a viable defense to plug in. That's one of the defenses I was kind of looking at on the face of it so far that would kind of give us a good amount of salary to finish this build, and good price on them. So yeah, on the face of it, the Jaguars. If there's a few other defenses that are a little higher up the scale that are clear-cut good spots. Green Bay against Cleveland maybe with the pass rush on Flacco. You have the Colts facing the Titans, Seahawks at home. Seahawks, really good-looking defense so far against Spencer Rattler. So definitely a lot of good options to defense this week. But on the lower end of the scale for this team, having Bijan, I would say Jacksonville. What says you?
I think both teams in that game are pretty interesting. I think that you look at, Trevor Lawrence has kind of struggled through 2 weeks. He's missed a lot of throws. Brian Thomas Jr. didn't show a lot of. Brian Thomas Jr. did not show much effort, I guess you'd say. Like if you look on Twitter and stuff, there's videos of like kind of breaking down his play, his targets. He has just underperformed so much. And then, you look at the film and kind of protecting himself. And then Liam Cohen let it slip in the post-game press conference that he has a wrist injury that they're probably going to get in trouble for not disclosing. So I actually think that I kind of like the Texans side of it. You look at this Jaguars offense, and I do think that things will get better for them. But if you look at the Jaguars so far, they've played the Panthers and the Bengals, and we're entering week 3. We're talking about how Lawrence hasn't looked great, how he's struggled a little bit. And, I'm guessing you watched that Monday night game with the Bucs just like I did. And Mayfield was, he was being forced into some tough situations. The Texans special teams was making some plays. They're getting good pressure. So I think that's a really good defense at a really cheap price, facing, frankly, a quarterback and an offense that has struggled a bit. I think their backfield has done pretty good, but whenever we see these teams we know are really good defenses, perception kind of gets like iffy on them, but they're not clearly like way off, like where everyone's just going to be like, yes, play the Texans defense. That's one I'd prefer that side of that game, I guess, is where I'm going. But I think that the Jaguars are viable too, because I think, we saw the same thing on Monday night with the Houston offensive line. But I think Houston offense, they're going to get Christian Kirk back. There's a chance they look a little bit better this week.
Yeah, I like that call. I would be shocked if there's a lot of ownership on the Texans defense, and they did for the most of the game contain a really good Bucs offense. I don't know the status of Al-Shazir with the Texans on defense. I know he had got injured. Not sure if that's anything that's a time frame wise serious thing, so maybe something to monitor there. But yeah, I'm fine with the Texans right around the same price range, and leaves us a pretty healthy salary for the rest of the team to build.
Yeah, and then I want to add Tyler Warren here just because I'm going to keep talking about him every single week until the blow up happens. He 2 weeks he's had 9 and 7 targets, so he's averaging 8 targets a game, gone over 70 yards receiving in both games. He's had a carry in each game, so they're not afraid to use him on some of these short yardage things. They haven't been carries near the goal line yet, but like if they have this package for short yardage stuff, eventually it's something that could be used near the goal line. He also was like, they're scheming him looks in the short area. They had him lined up like in the backfield and ran like a sail route from that, and he caught a long pass against the Broncos. So just like a rare combination of like explosiveness and varied usage, and he's only 5,600. So like I said, it's just keep playing him. Is kind of where I'm at with Warren.
Yeah, you'll get no pushback from me on that. He was in our lineup last week, and Pickens. We're not patting each other's backs, folks, but it's just we definitely see something there, and I'm completely fine, especially at his price. His price didn't really move either. It's pretty much the same as it was. And yeah, I sense that a blow up's coming. The Colts offense is looking better than expected in general, but yeah, he is just a great target, great instincts from what I saw in that game, and I'm fully down with him, and that also frees up salary with the last 2 spots. I see a couple spots at wide receiver that, based on the price of what we have left, are definitely appealing to me. I don't know if you have somebody in mind that you want to.
I have someone in mind I have one player in mind, but let's see what are you thinking at wide receiver, and then we'll see if my guy fits.
Okay. Well, on the higher end, and of course he's on the road, it's relatively tough matchup, but I love Puka Nacua, what I'm seeing from him this season. He's got the rushing ability. He's all over the field. He's looking, he gets injured every game, but he's like a warrior. He's running around bloody and just making plays, and definitely the focal point of that offense still. So at 9,000 Puka, or at 8,000, if we wanted to kind of keep it around the range we're currently at, Jackson Smith-Njigba at home against the Saints, 10 targets and 13 targets the first 2 weeks. He is perennially the offense for that team, and I think he'll continue to be solid and capable of a bigger blow-up game. But just on the floor part of it, he's been pretty solid with that team, and now he's at home against the Saints at 8,000. Those two were the receivers for that last receiver spot I was thinking about. Either option, I think, would leave us a good amount of salary for the flex, but which way would you like to go?
Yeah, so let's see if we put Puka in. And yeah, he's a guy that, like, the way they use him, they're willing to use him on the ground. They're willing to, like, this last week he had 8 catches on 9 targets, also had a 45-yard rush. This offense, it's him and Devontae Adams have like a 67% target share through 2 weeks. So like the two of them just like are going to dominate usage. Frankly, the Rams haven't run the ball especially well. They actually, Blake Corum, a name to keep an eye on. If Kyron Williams ever misses time, Corum is a guy who head coach Sean McVay said after the game that, he'd prefer to have it like a 2/3, 1/3 Kyren to Corum breakup of the work. So like very different than what we've seen from the Rams the past couple of years. And Corum looked really good this last week. But basically it's kind of the backfield, which, Kyren hasn't looked great through the first 2 weeks. Granted, they've played Houston and Tennessee, who I think have pretty solid run defenses. But they play the Eagles again this week. So it's not like that's getting easier. So how are they going to move the ball? And Puka is just like, he's going to have the usage and he has the talent that he can put up a big game kind of against anyone. So not going to get big pushback from me there. The only thought I had is I really like I love Christian McCaffrey this week. I think that Arizona game we saw last week, the Cardinals got out to like a big lead and then they let Carolina back in it. But part of that was a bunch of the Arizona defense. They had like 5 guys leave due to injury, including 3 guys in their secondary and a defensive lineman. So I think San Francisco is going to have a lot of success at home this week, and CMC, obviously a huge part of that. He has had 2 pretty good games. They involved Brian Robinson a little bit more this last week, but I think that we haven't seen like the blow up, and I think this could be it. I think they could really take off against Arizona. So I like getting McCaffrey into this lineup, getting that third running back. Not that I don't like Puka, but I guess if I was going to pay up for a wide receiver on this build, instead of Puka, I might make like a switch to Lamb. So and then change Caleb to Dak. So it would turn into a Dak double with the Dunze bring back. Like if I was going to pay I'm building this lineup around that Dallas-Chicago game. So if I'm going to pay up for a wide receiver in that $9K price range, I would try to make it the guy from that game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's the thing, guys. Multiple entries, that's typically what we do. And there's a perfect idea of how to start with the team and then kind of, have that idea to do a couple of adjustments and have another team that's just as viable. And so, yeah, no, definitely, if we went the Lamb route, that would make sense. But if we do stay with Christian McCaffrey, which I'm completely fine with, I mean, he is the offense. Juwan Jennings kind of got back in the mix a little bit, which was good to see. But Christian McCaffrey is going to get his, as they say, definitely at home, definitely capable of putting up big numbers on Arizona. If that leaves us with 6,900, there is somebody I like at a couple $100 less. And also, if we're not going the route of Bill Merritt, and that would be Deebo Samuel. At home against the Raiders. Again, he's used in a multifaceted way. With Jaden Daniels, probably want to limit him a little bit more on the rushing side of his offensive capabilities with the sprained knees recovering from. So Deebo in there, I think he's had a great start to the season so far, and I think he's a good candidate in that kind of matchup at home to make some production for us on this team. And then that would leave us with a couple $100, and maybe we look at the defense at what's available. I see the Patriots at home against the Steelers. Could be a viable option if we wanted to spend the whole salary, or if we just want to leave it hanging. I guess our 4 o'clock players are kind of the beginning shell of the build here. But yeah, that would be a mention for me at the last receiver spot. And then what says you on that?
Yeah, the thing with Deebo, I like him. I really like him, but I think like in this, I guess the Daniels situation plays into it a bit. Also, like I think the Washington defense has looked like all right. Like the Packers kind of torched them up, but I think the Packers are really good. And that was a short week. It was a Thursday on the road in Green Bay. This week, Washington's going to be at home, got Vegas traveling cross country after playing on Monday night. So kind of the opposite. Like, I think their defense will show up, and then you got the Daniel stuff. I'm not sure this game environment really takes off. And I think Debo, like, his usage gives him a pretty high floor, the way that he's used, and he's getting like a decent amount of targets. But I also don't really see him as like a big play guy. So like we saw last week, like all the high scoring, and you kind of need those. You want, especially on FanDuel, you want all of your spots to have really access to like a very high ceiling, I guess. So I think there are different ways we could go here. I'm scrolling through here. I kind of like Garrett Wilson. He's coming off obviously a very poor game, but he's such a big part of their offense. And I actually think that their passing game could improve with Justin Fields likely to miss. I think Tyrod Taylor is going to pepper him with targets. I think that their defense has looked really bad through 2 weeks. The Bills kind of just sleepwalked right through them this last week. And then the Steelers, they made the Steelers look like world beaters in week 1. So I think the Jets, traveling down to Tampa, that's a spot where like Wilson could get a bunch of targets. But, as I'm talking through it more, I also think like, is that really a high ceiling type of game in terms of like what can this offense really put up?
Well, I like Wilson from the standpoint of it's hard to run on Vita Vea and company on the Tampa Bay defense. So they'll probably have to make Garrett Wilson a priority. But yeah, I didn't know what the injury status of Justin Fields was yet. So definitely Tyrod Taylor is capable of getting the ball to Garrett Wilson. And he'll probably be one of the only shows in town for the Jets to try to put any kind of pushback. Maybe the Bucs kind of get out early, and then it's a question of whether the Jets can keep up at all, or whether it's just going to be a blowout and kind of like putting the reserves in at the end of the third quarter, beginning of the fourth kind of thing. So yeah, I see the case to be made for him, but I'm also open to somebody else if you want to finish the build elsewhere.
Let's move up from the Texans. All right, so we're gonna correlate this thing a little bit. Let's move up from the Texans to the Falcons. Like I said, the Panthers looked really bad against the Jaguars. They looked terrible to start the game against Arizona, and then as Arizona kind of took we're gonna kind of correlate what we saw in week 2 in a couple of ways. So we saw Carolina really struggling offensively. Arizona's defense was holding them down. Arizona got out to this big lead and was in control of the game. They really took their foot off the gas offensively. So as the Arizona defenders, as their defense was more shorthanded, which we're banking on that kind of happening again this week for Arizona, and CMC having a blow-up spot, well, that can give us false pretense of, Carolina, their offense, they got it going, but they didn't really. That was more, situational and like Arizona kind of self-inflicting on how they handled things and their injury situation. So from that standpoint, we've seen 6 quarters of like ineptitude from the Carolina offense, and this Atlanta defense, they look pretty legit this year. They kind of had their way with Tampa Bay. They made JJ McCarthy look terrible, which, maybe that might have something to do with McCarthy as well. But just either way, I think just playing Atlanta with Bijan, combined just over 13K. I could easily see if Bijan has that 30-point game, breaks a couple long ones, they get out to a lead, and then those rookie pass rushers for the Falcons can kind of tee off on Young. I could see it getting real ugly there. And then tying that all together, Marvin Harrison Jr. sitting here at 6,400. Nobody's really going to want to play him, which again, ownership doesn't really drive my thoughts. But when we're storytelling, when we're putting these things together, just talked about that Arizona offense, just talked about how like Harrison had an awful game in week 2, but like they didn't really have any reason to try to get it to him. Like they were just in such control of the game. And if we think that their defense is going to be beat up and the 49ers are going to kind of run things on them, this would be the spot where Harrison, where they're forced to throw it to him 10, 11, 12 times. And maybe he can kind of have that upside game. And so to the earlier point about like Debo and game scripts and access to ceiling, we know Harrison is like, he was probably like 3 feet away from a monster game in week 1. If Kyler had put that ball on him, it could have been like a 98-yard touchdown to go with the like 5 for 80 in the touchdown he had. So I think it, and we don't care when our fantasy points are scored, right? It actually might be kind of fun if it happens with 7 minutes in the fourth quarter and they're down, 34-13, and then he catches a 70-yard pass that means nothing to anyone else. That would be kind of fun for us, right? I think from that standpoint, just kind of those two, if we go up to Falcons defense, and then we put Harrison in as that third wide receiver, you look at Odunze, Pickens, and Harrison, they're all guys who were drafted in like the 3rd to 5th or 6th round of best ball drafts and stuff before the season. But all of them have massive weekly ceilings. It's just a consistency thing, or a perception thing at the time. I think Odunze's kind of outperformed that, but all these guys, they could go for 140 and 2 touchdowns and it wouldn't really be surprising.
Yeah, and you organically did the correlation with Christian McCaffrey and the flex. So you kind of like a inadvertent skinny stack. I do like that. I mean, recency bias on the ownership part of it, even though that's not the first thought of why you're doing it, will inherently be low owned, and he's always capable of a ceiling game. So there is some ceiling there. One more idea I would throw out there. I know time-wise, probably need to wrap it up, but you could also go Emeka Egbuka here at 6,300, and that would filter you to the Bucs defense at 4,000, kind of telling the story of the Bucs shutting down the Jets and the Bucs kind of going off offensively. The Jets have a decent defense, but I'm assuming Sauce Gardner probably be on Evans, and Egbuka is kind of being used all over the field. He did score another touchdown again, so the touchdowns are there with him so far, which we like on FanDuel. So yeah, just another idea, but I'm definitely fine with the old school Bijan running back defense, and then you have the correlation with MHJ and McCaffrey, so I'm fine with that too.
Cool, yeah. We'll leave it there, but I do like the Egbuka call. He's a guy who they played Monday night, so I would think if the salaries had already come out, he ended with 4 catches, 29 yards, and a touchdown on 7 targets. But like he was being schemed. I think there was a couple more targets where like they had penalties, call some stuff back. So you won't see that in the box score. But he had a nice game, and they're his targets are not such that like sometimes you'll see a guy who he gets 6 or 7 targets, but it just happened to be like he ended up being the guy who's open, or that quarterback happened to look his way. Whereas like Egbuka, like those 7 targets, like 4 or 5 of them were plays directly designed to get him the ball. So definitely think there's some merit to that. And we saw this Jets offense kind of really struggle to sustain drives against Buffalo last week. And when that happens, the opposing offense just ends up, they get so much play volume and so many opportunities with the ball. So for sure can see that. Here we go. Mad Sox throws in AJ Terrell has a hammy injury. Tet time? Potentially. I love Tet McMillan.
So do I.
He's still only at 6,000 as he is. He had his first career 100-yard game. He's averaging almost 10 targets a game. You could play him with Bijan. You could play him in this lineup or any lineup with the Falcons D too, because like we saw last week, Cardinals defense scored a touchdown early. They were close to the optimal defense, and then Tet still had a game. So at his price tag, he could just duplicate what he did last week. And if he had a touchdown, you're cooking with gas. So, yeah, I think. Go ahead.
Can be true. I was saying two things can be true in a game, and good shout out by Mad Sox there. I'm also way down with Ted McMillan, looking good in the best ball share so far. So,
yeah, for sure. So, real quick for the listeners on the podcast feed, the final lineup that we ended on, which I'm loving how this lineup looks. We've got Caleb Williams at quarterback, our running backs Jordan Mason and Bijan Robinson, Rome Odunze, George Pickens, and Marvin Harrison at the wide receiver spots, Tyler Warren at tight end, Christian McCaffrey, late afternoon hammer in the flex spot, and Atlanta Falcons defense to bring it all together, correlate with Bijan. So, any parting words, Maximus?
Yeah, I like this build too. Very exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing all the content coming up on OWS, guys. So many resources on OWS to help navigate you guys in your process throughout the week. So definitely continue to be looking for the shows and the scroll and all the material that I'll be doing a write-up. Mike will be doing a million things. So definitely be looking for it.
Yeah, for sure. And one last reminder, just like we said at the start, the Bink Machine this week, $1 for week 3 only. It's $1. Use the Bink Machine, toy around in there, get an edge, check it out, see if you like it. Check us out, oneweekseason.com. Again, we'll have everything up throughout the week, and we're going to be loading up the Binks channel, loading up the top of the leaderboards once again this Sunday. So thank you. I am Mike. He is Steve, a.k.a. Maximus. We'll see you next week.